Sales Master series and understanding products of IGS. In the first three videos, we looked at the need for research and why understanding a little bit more about the customer will help us solution the offerings that we have for them very clearly. In the second video, we looked briefly about our capability to offer services and how we are well poised in the market to offer services to our clients, and more importantly, look at the team structure and the thumb rules that we have. In the third part of the video, we did go through a standard presentation deck on how we present our products to our end customer. Now, in this video, what we would briefly touch upon is to understand the concept of framework a little bit more in detail. If you realize that in the previous video, I kept harping about the fact that what we have is more of a game authoring framework, and we would be in a position to build custom simulations to client based on their needs. And some of the use cases that we have currently embarked on is employee onboarding, sales, and process training. So now let's look at the concept of a framework a little bit more in detail. So when we said that we have is a framework, the next question that comes to anybody's mind is, why are we even calling it a framework? So what is a framework? What are the qualities of a framework? So if anything has to be a framework, it has to be universally acceptable. It should you should be in a position to use that particular object for more than one single use case. It should be quite scalable, which means to say that anybody and everybody should be in a position to use that particular product and then build things at scale, right? So if we focus on these two elements of framework, and I'm sure there are more as you might know, but let's just focus on these two aspects of the framework, right? The universality and more importantly scalable, right? So how are we poised, and why are we even saying that this is universal? So let's look at any corporate training, right? So what is in any corporate training, the aspect is what is the overall context or setting. So the context or setting is, it happens in an office environment, or the transaction that anybody does happens in a marketplace, or it happens in a customer space, right? So you could have any transaction that you could consider that happens within a corporate realm would either happen within the confines of an office environment, or it could happen in a public market place where if it's an FMCG product, or if it's sales and distribution, it happens in a marketplace, or it could happen in the confines of a customer's house. So what are these? These are physical environments. So what we do is to have physical models of these environments already pre-built. So currently, as we speak, in the product, we have an office environment, we have a virtual banking environment already created, and we have a retail space already created, right? So within the office environment, I'm sure you would have guessed what would be there. You would have a reception, then you would have things of, let's say, the work bay. I could have conference rooms and manager cabins. I would be in a position to, we could have a cafeteria and, let's say, an entertainment room in large offices where you have a sports room, so on and so forth, right? So today in our 3D models, we have these multiple environments created. We have a banking hall created, we have a retail space created. And typically what defines the office room of a particular office vis-a-vis another, it's the branding that is different. So leave the layout. So there are two elements that would be different. One could be let's say I just take this to another structure, right? So in this particular structure, what could be different? I could have the branding of the structure could be different, and the layout could be different. So what we are not currently focusing is this, right? We are saying, irrespective of how your layout looks like, we are not really mimicking the exact space, but we are focusing, on the branding, where companies would be able to add, their logos. They would be able to add their, posters, danglers, if it's a bank branch, right? And all of that would make it look like, how an office environment of a particular company would look like. So what we have is the first, structure is we have an office environment, where we simulate, physical environments such as an office, a banking, and a retail space. And we do have these environments in both 3D models and as well as, 2D models, right? So this particular structure, that you're seeing here, we have it, both, these created in 3D space, and we have it in a 2D space. Why do we, say that? So, for clients who says, what, hey, your product looks a little bit more futuristic, and I'm not quite sure if my employees would play, then they would want to move in from a 3D model to a 2D model. So right now we have structures, after the new release of the Workplace Mystery product, that we have moved, from 3D models. We also have the capability, to create an office environment in the 2D space, as well. So the first thing that, you would want to understand is, where is the transaction or training, happening? It's happening in a particular context, which is the office environment. Now, once this happens within an office environment, what are the next things that are different, right, in any training program? So you would have different, departments. Different departments would need, different, functional knowledge or training, right? So there would be different, departments, and you would need multiple learning paths. So even in the game, we have learning paths, which are created, and each learning path would actually lead to different, training or different functional paths. So which means, if an employee is joining an HR function vis-a-vis a finance function, vis-a-vis a procurement function, and you would want them to actually understand the content, or train them on very specific topics, pertaining to that particular department, we, would be able to do that, because we have what's called as multiple learning paths, or within the game, paradigm, we call them multiple game rooms. So we have multiple game rooms and game paths, which will help, organization offer different, functional training programs. And the interesting part again here is, it is it is also role driven, right? Which is, there are a few people who will join the senior management role. There would be a few people joining the junior management role, and the content that you would need to expose to a senior manager would be different to a junior manager, which means this is, role driven. So again, in the game, within these different departmental functions, you could further classify and break it down into different roles, and these roles could further be, classified into multiple, sub roles. And I've just given you two examples of senior management and junior management, right? So now what we have done is, we have looked at the context. So any corporate training happens within a context, and the context is an office environment or a customer space, which is represented either in a 3D or a 2D model. The moment I get into this particular, virtual space, then I'm transported to my own game rooms, because depending upon the nature of the game room that I enter, the content would also completely differ, right? So this is where I get into multiple, game, rooms or paths. Now, having gone into each of these, game rooms, if I'm a senior management, person, I would now need to have, different tasks, or activity that I would need to be trained on, right? So let's assume, the use case of insurance company, because that's in the back of my mind. If I'm, let's say, the claims head or the underwriting head, I would now need to understand the policies of underwriting. I would now need to understand the various actuarial, aspects of the claims ratio. I would now need to understand the overall end-to-end process in terms of how well the policies are being sourced and the other regulatory items, laid down by the IRDA. Now, if those are, things that I would need to do, there are multiple tasks that I would need to learn, and each of these now in the game becomes a different set of missions. So I have different missions that we have configured, and these missions are nothing but different learning objectives uh, which are available for individuals to understand specific set of activities, right? So I will have a learning objective only to understand, let us say, the claims process, right? Okay. And the second mission is for me to understand how the endorsement process works, right? And the third mission for me to understand is, let us say, called as commercial claims, so on and so forth, right? So each tasks that I would need to understand is broken down into multiple missions, and multiple missions are nothing but various learning objectives that are provided to the learner. Now again, let's go a little deeper. If I would need to understand the claims process, what is it that I would need to do? I would need to, let's say, talk to people, learn the standard operating procedures, right? And I would need to try it myself. So let's just keep it quite simple, right? So if I will have to do all of these things, what do we have? We have, again, conversation simulations that we have built, which will help me talk to people. For me to learn the SOPs, we have digital walls, we have puzzles that we have created, and the puzzles could again be a 2D puzzle or a 3D puzzle, right? I could have digital walls where I could go ahead and then learn through infographic. I could learn through videos, so on and so forth, right? So there could be, and if I will have to try it myself, we have the try me simulations, where we provide the user the task in their PC in the virtual world, where they would be in a position to go ahead and then try out whatever they have learned. So now if you would see, the reason why we are calling it as a framework is, again, when it comes to universality, what we would need is, understand the context, within which the training happens. In this particular case, the context could be an office environment, a banking or retail space, environments. And these environments are pre-created in the form of 3D and 2D models that we already have. And now when the training happens within this particular context, we would be in a position to enter different departments, right? If you could visualize a 3D space where the ground floor is an HR department, and the first floor is an operations department, and the third floor is a finance department, I could now, within these physical environments, enter different departmental roles. And within these departments, I could have multiple roles configured. It could be a senior management or a junior management role. And based on my role, there are multiple tasks and activities that would be designed for me. And each of these tasks and activities are further broken down into game missions, because a game mission is nothing but a learning objective. So if you see this from an instructional design standpoint, all of this is linked to well-researched pedagogical approaches, where we have broken down into learning objectives, learning sub-objectives, and then start creating evidences, right? And then finally, for each of the learning objectives, I have various interactivity, and my interactivity could be talking to people, learning the SOPs, or trying it myself. So all of this again is in the form of various modules that is already preconceived in terms of conversation simulations, digital walls, puzzles, and my own computer PC, with which I could do a try me and show me simulations, right? So I hope you have now understood the reason why we are calling it as a gaming framework, because it comprises, of the elements that are typically required for any training. So in the next video, what I'm going to do is to take a simple example, right? So we have had the new, we have had people from HMM, join us, and let me take a, interesting example and then showcase how, we would be in a position to offer some of these training programs as a quick example. Thank you.